Action. What's up? It's Coach Jason,
Coach RJ,
back with another episode of the Mach 1 Method. Today, we're going to be chatting to you guys about how to optimize your training for fat loss, specifically how strength training fits into the mix. I don't know, about you, but especially when I first started getting into the fitness industry as a whole, you ever think of any type of deficit and exercise? I think it was always correlated to cardio.
Yeah.
Because, that's how you're going to burn the most amount of calories and stuff like that. And, to me, it took me a while to understand, but yes, cardio does probably burn more, perhaps even like double the amount of calories than a weightlifting session is going to burn. But when I was going to school, you learn about EPOC, and you understand what gaining more muscle mass does for the metabolism long term. And it just makes so much more sense to prioritize strength training as a whole in terms of your fat loss journey and continue to keep like your cardio kind of like sprinkled in. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have like kind of stuff to share about that?
Yeah, they definitely both have a place. It's not that we're saying cardio is the devil and strength training, is all you got to do. But there's definitely a balance that people need because there's different forms of cardio, right? And then, if we're talking about a triangle and we're prioritizing like a foundation, like strength training is that foundation.
Yes.
You're trying to put on lean tissue. It's going to help the metabolism. And then that fuel to the fire or that spark is dabbling into that cardio.
I like what you said about how there's different types of cardio too. Not a lot of people understand that not all cardio is the same. I know we're supposed to be talking about strength training, but it is a really valid and important distinguishment because, cardio training that you're doing through like high intensity intervals is going to it's going to be way different than riding a bike for
like your steady state.
Yeah, 100%. And even though strength training doesn't really have like an aerobic effect, strength training typically is going to be done at like a more similar heart rate intensity to a steady state. You're not really going to spike too much. Like it's almost like a low intensity interval.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Like you get that seemingly hard effort if you're training at a high intensity,
Briefly.
but it's really not, you don't get that cardio effect.
Exactly. But like from that heart rate perspective, you're staying in like using a buzzword in that fat burning zone, more likely.
Yeah, and I guess for those that don't know, we'll keep it pretty simple, but the steady state is essentially you going for a jog and maintaining a similar intensity for the bout of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
The HIIT or high intensity is usually like a shorter effort, right? So you're only working for like 10 to 30 seconds, maybe a minute, trying to hold a higher intensity. And then you get an interval or you get a break. And then you repeat those intervals. They both have pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
What I'll keep it short is the steady state will burn less calories per unit of time. So it actually takes a little longer. So to burn the same amount of calories as a HIIT session, you might need to work for like an hour, right? Where you do like a 15 to 20 minute HIIT workout, you burn the same calories, which is great. Kind of depends like what you have. If you have time to do the slow intensity stuff, it's fantastic. It's great. But do you want to hang out in the gym for 2 hours or do you want like a 15 to 20 minute workout?
Right.
What's realistic in your schedule? So those would be the two big differences there. Or maybe that could be a topic for a later time. We dive into some cardio.
Yeah, we definitely should dive a lot deeper because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
I guess reverting the topic back to strength training is like, I think the reason why we say it's like such a foundation is because not just for the fat, like I do want to talk more about like how it affects fat loss, but strength training also has such a translating effect on life and lifestyle as a whole. So I think having it be the foundation and the base is important for so many reasons, but the more muscle you're able to build through strength training, again, kind of making this conversation more of a mechanism of like fat loss, right? It's almost like keeping your stove running at a higher temperature.
Yeah.
Like, are you gonna try to cook a steak on a low heat?
Like
Or
100, yeah.
right, or you're gonna try to cook it a medium to high heat, right? If you're in the oven, 100 degrees Fahrenheit,
Yeah.
or you go in at 400 degrees
Yeah.
or 375.
It's funny. I was thinking like it's just like more wood in the fire.
Right.
Know?
It's like kind of the same exact thing. It's like you need if you want a bigger fire or a bigger metabolism, you want things to run hotter and you want your body to burn more calories at rest.
Yeah.
You need more of that fuel. You need more of the firewood or the coal or the propane gas, whatever it is.
What we're talking about is
talking about these biceps. The biceps is the firewood, and the weights is the ignition.
Yes. That's essentially what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, the more you have on you, the easier it is to retain like a lower level of body fat, because your body needs more fuel and it's going to keep burning it at a consistent rate.
Yeah.
I think like a really important thing to understand about how the body works is BMR. Like, so that stands
That's
for.
where I was gonna talk like nutrition wise, like how
get into that.
Having more lean tissue, you know, in that sense. Like we'd say like, oh, like building lean tissue, but like what does it do for you? And my brain was kind of alluding to you to talk about that. So Jason's going to allude on the BMR and what that means.
Yeah. I mean, so basal metabolic rate, it's essentially how many calories a day your body's burning by doing nothing. Like just like lying in bed, and probably even less than lying in bed. But that basal metabolic rate is going to change based on your height and weight, but more importantly is how much of that weight is comprised of lean tissue versus fatty tissue, right? Muscle has and stores glycogen, which is used for energy.
Yeah.
The more muscle you have, the more glycogen your body is able to and is likely going to store. So that's more readily available fuel for your body to just take on demand.
Okay.
Right? If you don't have a lot, then your body is still going to look for the muscle tissue and food, of course, but for readily available fuel. But if you don't have a lot of muscle, then your metabolism starts to catabolize, as opposed to, which is essentially a way of saying it starts to attack itself, right? Your body doesn't want to use fat deposits as a means for creating energy. It's a more complicated chemical breakdown.
Yeah.
It takes longer. And when you need energy throughout the day, it's going to look for that glycogen more, right? So obviously getting in your carbs is really important for increasing the amount of readily available fuel, and increasing the amount of muscle you have is also really important for that readily available fuel. And the more muscle you have, again, just kind of looping this back, you're giving yourself like a bigger storage unit in that sense. I know a lot of people don't think about muscle in the sense of like storage. But it really is. And it's going to just help keep the firewood near the fire as opposed to having to go like scavenge for it.
Yeah. And it's funny talking about it. Like a couple of things are going through my brain. We'll get individuals who come in and they're like, yeah, I've been hammering the cardio. I've been really trying to stay like locked in on my diet. Mm-hmm. And like, the biggest thing we say is like, well, are you doing any resistance exercise? And they're like, no, like I've just been like, excuse my French, like sweat my ass off, you know, like, and they're working hard and we don't want them to not work hard, but that missing piece to really like change the outcome was the resistance exercise. And they're mind blown. It's either like, maybe they're not eating enough and they need to lift a little bit more. And they're like, you're making me eat more. You're making me lift. Like, how am I going to lose weight? And then boom, in due time, like scale drops, like you're seeing, the clothes change, you're putting on some lean tissue when we hop on the scale. And, it at first it doesn't seem appropriate, but, it can be that missing link that, maybe this individual is missing.
Yeah. What kind of like strength training methodologies would you say lend itself better or worse to that type of desired result?
Yeah, like, on paper, the ACSM just came out with some new guidelines being very like, proactive in the sense like we need to lift heavier things. Like,
Mm.
I think it was like 75 to 80%, a couple sets throughout the week.
What is
And
75 to 80% for people who may be listening that don't know what that means?
yeah, so there are some like general recommendations, and when you read it, they'll put, possibly like a certain amount of reps that you do, how many times you do those reps, which are sets, and then a percentage. And that's one way to, challenge yourself is based off of a percent of the max that you could do. So, say I'm doing, a bench press and I can do 1,000 pounds,
Of course.
right now. We'll
Yes.
call it 100 for easy math. And, if I say I need to do 80%, I'm going to take 80% of 100, which is 80, and do that for the prescribed reps.
Mm.
Right. So, people who are avoiding lifting a little heavier, we're finding that lifting those heavier weights is actually very proactive, not only for muscle mass, but bone density, and amongst other things. So, you need to get some of that resistance training in the routine. There are a multitude of methods, but hit your compounds. So you have your push, your pull, your squat, your hinge. Throw some core, carry, and actually throw some sprints in there if you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, when I started my jump training program a couple weeks back, and I started throwing in sprints, my first sprint session for like 3 days, I didn't do any like lower body lifting, at least like nothing significant. And like it was like the day after the sprints, my legs were so sore,
Yeah.
toasted. I was like, oh man, it's been a minute since I've done
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just something to keep in
underrated.
the routine, like, if you can. And ultimately with everybody, it depends on like how long have you been training? Are you new to
Mhm.
this? Right. So you always got to meet the person where they're at. You can't just throw, this like very advanced program for somebody who's never really done anything. So
I guess that's also like an important thing to talk about is beginner versus advanced in the realm of strength training, because I don't know what the ACSM how they refer to it with this, but 80% to a beginner is like, I don't want to say irrelevant because it really depends on like what kind of beginner they are,
yeah.
but it might not, a true beginner might not even be able to achieve 80% of a one rep. Like 80% effort might look a lot different
Yeah.
for someone who's untrained. Like you might need to work with a beginner in like a much higher rep scheme, like 8 to 10 reps,
Yeah.
to build up that reserve and that muscle endurance before you're able to really tap into, max effort strength and train based off of that.
Yeah, yeah. So, I guess if you're first getting started, like, there's a ton of rep schemes. You're seeing people put out some crazy periodization models,
Sure.
but you just keep it simple. Like, you want to work in like a moderate level. If we're talking kind of like red, yellow, green, if you're in the green light zone, it's probably too easy.
Yeah.
We got to push it a little harder.
Mm-hmm.
If it's red light, you're grunting, you can't hold you're holding your breath, you can't breathe, maybe drop it down a little bit, right? And then you track the reps, like, hey, I got like 6 reps that time. I did it a couple sets. Write it down, track it in the Mach 1 Barbell app.
Of course.
And then the next time you come back to it, maybe try it again. Was it easier? Can you increase the weight? Can you do it for an extra round? Those would all be progressions for strength training.
Absolutely. What would you say would be like optimal frequency?
In terms of like throughout the week, or are you talking like
throughout the
muscle
week.
group?
Yeah, let's say
Yeah.
throughout the week.
Okay, so if you're like a general, client coming in, you're like, I want to lose some fat, I want to build some tissue, you want to be resistance training at least 2 to 3 times a week.
For sure.
Right. Optimally, I would put that 3 number on it.
Right.
Right. If you can and the schedule permits it, you get a 4th day. Great, depending on your goals, but 3 would be optimal.
Right. And I think like, in that question you brought up like muscle groups also, or movement patterns, but you also mentioned before focusing on like your compound movements.
Yeah.
Right. How much, I guess, if you like distinguish compound movement, isolation, or single joint movement, and maybe do you have any opinions on like how often those should be integrated into your routine?
Yeah, I think, if you're trying to build lean tissue, like you don't want to just do exercises that are like one joint specific. So like if you're in the gym and you're just doing, I mean, you could do a full day of bicep curls. We're not gonna.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
definitely can.
Yeah.
Especially with summer coming up.
Yeah. But if you take, if you're investing time in just working one muscle group at a time, right? It's going to take a while to get that stimulus.
Sure.
So work the compounds, work full body, work larger muscle groups. Like that's going to be a bigger bang for your buck. So if we're going to, put our eggs in a basket, like meat and potatoes are the compound list, right? And then once you complete that and you have that, then you can earn some of the isolated stuff.
Right. I think that's a great point. It kind of also comes back to what you were saying about like green light, yellow light, red light. I think like a majority of the training should be in that like middle yellow light zone where you're not like extremely maxed effort or like just going through the motions,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of those compound multi-joint movements live in that yellow and maybe even the red zone a little bit. And it's good to touch that red zone. And then I think the isolations tend to live on the greener side of the yellow zone.
Yeah.
Right. But, it's definitely, it makes sense to do a movement like a pull down and a row, which are going to hit your biceps, just not directly. And then you do like 2 or 3 upper body pulling exercises that are compound multi-joint. And then you do 1 bicep isolation exercise where you get the focus on like those pretty muscles, right? But the bicep is already going to be utilized and fatigued from like other movements, right? And plus those multi-joint movements are going to work larger muscle groups. You want to get the larger muscle groups larger, right? Because that's again kind of talking about like our storages. Like you're getting like a bigger storage deposit, even bigger, right? Like there's only, unfortunately, so big like a bicep muscle can get compared to like your lats, right? Yeah.
So I mean, like, coming full circle, if you are somebody who, is possibly like questioning the routine or trying to figure out, do I sit on the elliptical for an hour? Do I do some strength training? We're definitely not, hating on the cardio.
No.
It's a mix of both. It's just, where do we prioritize, based off of this individual?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get that strength training in 3 days a week. Keep it simple.
Work your compounds.
Yeah. And, as long as you're coupling that with some sound nutrition, you should be seeing results.
Yeah.
And you'll probably feel a lot less stressed than just trying to slam a crap ton of cardio into your workouts. Also, it's a lot less taxing.
Yeah, that's for sure. And more fun to lift weights.
Way more fun.
I mean, throwing some weights around, sitting on a treadmill for an hour. Yeah.
I'll take the weights. 6 or 7 times at a time, I'll take the weights. I hate myself for saying that.
It was just like triggering.
And it's like, resist it. All right, I guess on that note.
Well, also, we got to give Sam a nice little shout out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If you haven't noticed, we got the swivelly chairs, we got the fresh cuts.
The Mach 1 method is really evolving in and of itself. It's going through its own periodization.
It is, yeah. We just had a new cycle. We do the training good. Now we need the look good.
Yes.
To feel good.
Appreciate you, Sam.
To play good.
Absolutely.
And that's the Mach 1 method.
Boom.
That's it. We're out.
Boom.
Catch you next time. Gonna hate myself for it.